What is up, y'all? Welcome back to the channel. Hey, this is your boy 12, and we're going to hit up a equipment tier list. I've been asked a few times about this, and generally, I'm not super game to do some kind of equipment tier list. I mean, it's not that there's anything wrong with it. It's just not really super relevant, but here I am. I figure I might as well, and I'm in a good mood, so 2 a.m., hitting up the equipment tier list. I'm going to start with my grays, grays, greens, blues, purples, legendaries in that order. So first I'm going to do a entire row of it in terms of the grays are going to come first, then I'm going to explain the grays, then I'm going to do the greens, explain the greens, blues, explain the blues, blah 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 blah. I'm going to try and not take up too much of your time with this. This is going to be kind of a long video just because this can't possibly be like a regularly sized video. So let us get some water. Please drop a like, a subscription, join the Discord if y'all enjoy the content, and without further ado, water time, and then we will hopefully get this video done under 40 minutes. None of the grades really stick out to me as particularly good or particularly bad. I'm probably just gonna put them all in the D tier because honestly they're completely irrelevant. The only one that's even moderately okay is probably the sword, because the sword has some kind of gathering speed on it. But again, none of these pieces of gear are good enough to waste the gold on early game, because early game you'd rather just have blues or greens, and at the same time none of them are worth delaying any of your other pieces. Gray pieces should generally just be sent to the gulag in terms of getting you other things for passports. So in terms of grays, boom, 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 super easy. Do not have to overthink this. Okay, in terms of greens, these three don't really give anything at all valuable. I would say perhaps in terms of being good for just killing barbs, I'd put these in the B tier. Killing barbs is pretty important. These are pretty cheap. They give a bunch of barb killing stats. Can't really hate on any of this in terms of giving barb killing stats when it comes to cavalry and infantry. I like that kind of stuff. So pretty reasonable. The machete's good, the helms are good, all of this stuff just gives barb damage, super cool. The greaves, the Vanguard greaves are awesome. I really like them. They're super cost effective. If you're running an early game cav set, you're going to want to use the Vanguard greaves, and if you're running a cav set further down the line, you're going to replace the Vanguard greaves with the gladiator pants. So I mean they're good for a while. They're super cost effective. And then when it comes to the Vanguard halberd, that's just probably the single best green item in the game. The cost effectiveness is off the charts. It's 9% stats, and it goes up to I think 12% stats, or 11.5 or 13.5% stats when it comes to special talenting it, which is not very difficult because it's a green. I really love both parts of the Vanguard set. They're super cost effective. Other than that, not a ton to say for the greens, and then we're just going to go right ahead to the blues. When it comes to blue pieces, the blue pieces are obviously going to start to get a lot better. Saint Song and the Cavalry Axe are both kind of terrible. Sentry Breaches are pretty bad. Calvin's Hand is pretty bad as well. Maybe Archer's Heavy Armor can probably go up over here. But when it comes to Archer's Heavy Armor, and when it comes to Staff of the Lost, which are these two Archer blue pieces, they're both not bad. It's just you're not trying to field archers at all with these pieces specifically. Okay, I was actually wrong. Okay, so the reason why we have these blue pieces set up: Sentry Breaches are bad, the Axe is pretty bad, Calvin's Hand is pretty bad. All the gathering pieces are going to be at least B tier just because they don't cost anything. They just cost bones. So if you have extra bones, you make them, you gather more resources. Not too bad. The reason why I have the XP pieces here, I would say these pieces aren't great for any kind of combat set, but I really want XP, especially early game, especially if I'm chaining, and getting more XP on whatever commanders I'm using is pretty good. I really like the necklace as well, because the necklace, again, just takes bones, and who cares about some bones? In terms of the staff here, the staff is okay. Golden Age is better, but it's at least a B tier thing for you to get before you have Golden Age for archers. Over here we have Call the Loyal. I like Call the Loyal a lot. I think it's worth being an A tier. You pick it up, you build it. It's going to be a good intermediary until you can get a legendary piece of gear, personally. Scarlet Hounds is really good. It's just a really good gear piece in general. I personally prefer Frost Tread, so maybe I'd bump it down to Staff of the Lost, but I mean it's very cost effective, and getting it early game is really good. It's just it gets outshone in combat slightly by Frost Treads, but most importantly, Frost Treads can double as barb killing gear, and having gear that's versatile like that is really important. When it comes to the Windswept set, the Windswept set is the early game set. You run it on your cav, you run it on your infantry, and it does absolutely awesome. Personally, I almost want to put it in S tier, but I feel like that's probably giving it a little bit too much, because as soon as you can start replacing it, you do. So I don't want to give it too much credit where it probably doesn't deserve it. The Expedition Helm is absolutely awesome. The Expedition Helm for Cavalry is what you run all the way up until the KVK Helm. That's no small feat. That's a huge accomplishment. So Expedition Helm is awesome. S tier is going to be the Gatekeeper Shield. Gatekeeper Shield might actually just be better than the Vanguard's Halberd, just in terms of cost effectiveness. Gatekeeper Shield might be like the most cost efficient item in the game. It is just so disgusting. For just like a few, like maybe like 60 blue materials overall, you just get like one of the single best infantry pieces you could possibly get in the game, and that's kind of awesome. With that being said, nothing too crazy here, and we're going to move on to the purples. Purple gear. There's a lot more purple gear than there are other gears, so I'm going to try and go through this as fast as possible. If it's down here in the D tier, it's kind of garbage. So we have 2 attack helms. We have the revival tassets. The reason why the revivals are in here is not because they are horrible specifically. It's because if you have the 4-piece set, they're better. However, whenever you run archers, you don't run the 4-piece set. You actually run the 2-piece set because you replace the chest with either Milky Way or the Dragon's Breath plate. With that in context, there's no reason to ever run the revival chest, and because you need 4 pieces of revival in order to proc it instead of 2, there's no reason to ever run the revival tassets, because you can just run the fanatic, or you don't run the revival legs because you can just run the fanatics tassets instead. It gives you an extra 0.5 stats. You literally lose nothing. That's why you make this D tier. It's the exact same price. It is just worse. So why would you possibly run that? Over here we have like an XP ring and like some kind of gathering ring. They're both pretty bad. There's not a huge reason to ever get either of them. Just kind of ignore the stuff down here. Anchor isn't bad. It gives extra gathering speed, or not Anchor, Peter's Sickle. Extra gathering speed is fine, but at the cost of 80 epic animal bones is kind of psychotic. That's basically damn near the entire price of a purple gathering set, so why would you do that? Sakura Fubuki, it's in C tier because honestly it's bad, but it's not that bad. I used to use Sakura Fubuki when it was special talented. I know a couple other people use it as well. It's only a temporary thing. Gatekeeper Shield is generally better, but I understand why people would run it, especially pre-sock. Okay, at the bottom of B tier, we have Ancient Stratagems. Ancient Stratagems is actually really good pre-sock, but once you get into Season of Conquest and you have access to Crystal Tech, there's not a whole lot of reason for you to need March size increase. I might move it a little further up just because it's honestly, I mean, it's not bad. Silent Trial isn't really that good. Delane's Amulet is probably like okay, but not great. Trial is easy to get, so it's on here, but honestly, you'd rather have Delane's for all intents and purposes. Ahead of this, we have the Gathering Gear. It's pretty expensive, so I have it under the blue Gathering Gear, but it's still really good in general. I mean, building these sets of purple Gathering Gear into the future, once you start getting the animal bones, especially you're not making them, you just get them over time. Pretty good idea. When it comes to these 3 pieces over here, we have the Cess Brutality, we have the Frost Shreds, and we have the Quinn Soul. They give barb damage, and barb damage is really good, and you just slap it on the things that you want to kill barbs with, and it's awesome. Not a whole lot to say about that. It's next to the other barb damage gear, it's next to the XP gear, into the gathering stuff. This is more like all like either utility pieces or like kind of like questionable late game pieces, right? In terms of utility, it all kind of does its job pretty well. In the A tier, we have Wind Scars. I really like Wind Scars. I think it's good even in endgame for some infantry marches if you really need them to go faster. It's just not a bad pick overall, and the BP isn't really hard to get from the Archaeologist Dig event. Over time, you just will have that, and you'll be able to special talent it quite easily. Dark Lord's Blessing is pretty good. I have it in the A tier just because I'd rather have the Cavalry set chest, so it wouldn't really find itself. I mean, technically, you could find it in a gear minimums, but you'd want to be one of the first things to replace. Over here, we have the 2 pieces of Revival that we want to run, which is the gloves and the helm. Both good. Can't really complain too hard about it. The Revival helm also doubles as a decent infantry helm, assuming you don't have the set infantry helm or the KVK infantry helm. The Fanatics Tassets are really good. They're just slightly better than the Revival plates, or the Revival legs. Being slightly better for the exact same price and the exact same amount of BP is, you know, good. There's not a whole reason for it not to be there. Flame Treads for the archers are good. It's archer health and boots. We like it. We like to see it. Cool. Golden Age is really good. Really solid archer weapon. It's one of the reasons why the like Staff of Loss is down here. Why would you run this when you could just save up some extra and then run like actually Golden Age? Over here we have Eset's Sufferance, which I guess should be closer to like the Dark Lord's Blessing. Because it is like decent cab gear, it's something you'd want to swap with Navars. It's, again, like, you're not putting Navars in minimum cab gear, but you are putting it in cab gear, period. So I would be, I'd be remiss to not have it at least in A tier, because it's something that I still run to this day, and I'm, you know, doing pretty well with my cab gear. I really like Heart of the Saint. Heart of the Saint is awesome. I prefer it, honestly, over the cab weapon. I don't like set cab wep at all. Maybe if it's a special talented KVK cab wep with Sacred Dominion with talent, then maybe I'd want to replace Heart of the Saint. But outside of that, I really like Heart of the Saint. I'm kind of tempted to put it at the tail end of S tier, just because, like, at least the Archer set weapon and KVK weapon are significantly better than Golden Age. That is not the case for Heart of the Saint. So I think I'm actually going to S tier Heart of the Saint, which is interesting because Heart of the Saint is so good and it comes straight after Vanguard's Harvard. So it's nice to know that it's, you know, it's a nice jump. After that, we have Gladiator, which is like Cavalry Health Pants, which is awesome. And we have Cavalry Stability, which is Infantry Health Pants. Both of these are really, really good, and you don't have to replace them until really, really late. The Cavalry Health Pants are easier to replace with Ash of the Dawn than the Infantry Pants are, because the Infantry Pants alternative is like Eternal Night, and it's really not that good. Other than that, these are pretty cut and dry, nothing too crazy. Finally, it's going to be the Legendary gear. I'm going to try my hardest with this. I might have a couple controversial opinions here, boys, and if I do, you know, please forgive me. But I will try my best. Okay. Wow. That was a lot. That was a lot more thinking than I thought I had in me. I'm actually considerably more tired after that. I did not expect that to actually, didn't expect that to wear me down as much as it did. Okay. So I'm going to try and go through this as best as I can. If it's in the D tier, it's pretty trash and there's not a huge reason to go over it. Some of these are just redundant. Like, for example, like the Cavalry set pieces, like why would you run that? Commander's Boots, Mountain Crushers, Shadow Lord's Retribution, Cape of the War God, set Cavalry, set Infantry stuff, Ian's Choice. Like, why would you, like, none of this is at all relevant. And when I talk about set Infantry, I'm just talking about set Infantry, the chest and the pants. They're both pretty bad. Over here, this is like a buff, this is like a buffing accessory. It's just not good compared to the other accessories, and for the same cost, it doesn't make any sense to do. Going up here, we have all the gathering pieces. For 6 gathering pieces, it's just really expensive. You just don't get that much more than having like a 4-piece purple set and a 2-piece blue set. There's not a huge reason to go for it unless you, for some reason, really need special talents, and you should for sure never ever iconic any of this. Shio's Return, I really just don't like it. I know there's some kind of garrison build that uses like Shio's Return, and it uses Sacred Grips, so maybe it's in C tier just because they're kind of easy to get, and then if you special talent them, maybe you can use them with Garrison. I don't know. I mean, they're not like completely useless. Like, there are some builds that use them. I'm just personally not interested in them, and so they're here. In terms of Vengeance, Vengeance just giving counterattack damage is just not super useful in general. I put it in C tier because, I mean, there probably is some use for it, but it's not useful to me, and it's not really useful to what I see in the open field. That is what mostly this tier list is over. Over here we have Greatest Glory. Personally, I don't think it's that great, but I think it could be used as something like a Gorgo LC maybe. Over here we have like the KVK pieces that don't really go into your main marches immediately. Things that you generally would have to special talent to really make them go into the meta for your set. And they're in B because they can be used eventually. They're just not something you'd want to focus on. Same with finishing like your entire Dragon's Breath set. Like, the Dragon's Breath set is, again, good, right? But it's not the thing you'd want to focus on the most. If you were to have like any 2 pieces of Dragon's Breath, you'd probably want like the weapon and the Dragon's Breath plate, and you probably wouldn't think about it too hard. Eternal Night is not actually that bad, and the BP are quite easy to get. So low B is probably okay. Like, it's not the end of the world if you have it. I'm just not a huge fan of it. Over here we have the Leadership set. The Leadership set does have its uses, just not for the vast majority of players. If you are doing like some kind of garrison thing, or you're like maybe playing Olympia, or you're like running mix for whatever godforsaken reason, like, the Leadership pieces just aren't that bad in general. When it comes to the Siege V formation pieces, they're good if you have a Siege V formation set, and the V formation commanders are not that bad overall, so I have them in the B tier. There is a use for them, I just probably wouldn't be using them. Ash of the Dawn is a really good piece. It's just not that much better than Gladiator, so I have it in the B tier, but if you build it, I wouldn't really cry over it. Moria's Web is something that I really like once you have 5 marches. Some people like it, some people don't. Dagger is definitely the way buffed up version of it. However, Dagger and Moria's Web both stack, so if you want one, you can also have the other. Personally, I'd rather have both, but not everybody would, and for that, it's in the B. For the Infantry Shield, infantry pieces are generally pretty good. The Infantry 4-piece, consisting of the helm, gloves, boots, and weapon, are all pretty good. The weapon is just the worst part of all of those and should be the last piece that you build. There's not a huge reason to take a step from the S tier Gatekeeper Shield all the way into the B tier weapon unless you already have all the other pieces. In the A tier, at the bare minimum, we have the weapon of the Lost Canyon, I believe, or Lost Kingdom or something like that. You get this from buying it in a VIP thing. I personally don't have it, but I believe it's just slightly better than Heart of the Saint, and you can iconic it, so kind of like, why wouldn't you? Like, if you have access to it, like, it's just a pretty good piece in general. It's super cheap comparative to everything else. $100 seems like a lot, but it's really not that bad. Over here, we have the 2 pieces of the leadership set that may actually find themselves in different meta marches. These could find themselves in archer marches, they can find themselves in infantry marches, as well as doing like the other rally garrison stuff. Personally, I don't run them, but I've seen some people run them and they've done well for other people, so I have them in the A tier. Correct. War drums. I like war drums as a solid piece to just be running instead of horn in some situations. Not in the situations where I run it. I know some people really swear by it, and for that, it's in the A tier. Me personally, I wouldn't. Navarre's Control is a really nice upgrade over ESET Sufferance. ESET Sufferance is further up because it's more cost effective, but if you're making an upgrade, getting a Navarre's Control is not too bad, and so that's why it's up here. Wouldn't be the first upgrade I make, and I don't think you should really go above your minimums for it, but if you make the upgrade, I wouldn't feel bad. Over here is the Archer set weapon. This is probably the second Archer set piece I would get if you're building it. Over here are the infantry set pieces. They're both pretty good. I like the gloves better because the gloves don't contest the cavalry boots. So if you're getting like pick 1 boots, you probably want to get the pick 1s for the cavalry and not the infantry. So that's just something to think about. That's why I like the infantry gloves better. Over here we have Dagger. Dagger's high A because Dagger's honestly awesome. It's not the best or even the second best accessory, but it's really good. Over here we have the set infantry helm. You may be wondering, why is the set infantry helm not an S tier if it is required to field an infantry march? The reason why is because I don't know when the update's going to come through. Chances are, I mean, you might just want to run a special talented for infantry revival helm and just kind of call it a day, instead of building like 4-piece infantry set when we don't know what the update is going to look like. Chances are the update could come in like 6 months and you could just build the infantry set and be fine, which is why all the infantry set is still pretty highly regarded. I would just be a little more nervous about it than I would be otherwise, and for that it's not S tier. And the A tier past that, we're going to have the cavalry set chest. The cavalry set chest is awesome. It is the first upgrade you make after you finish your bare minimums for cavalry. It's good. It's really, really good. It's just not a bare minimum. For that, it's A tier. Milky Way is slightly worse than Dragon's Breath chestplate as a endgame piece. Whatever the gear update is might make it slightly worse or slightly better. Regardless, it's still the highest in the A tier and honestly could serve as a fine replacement for Dragon's Breath, the Dragon's Breath plate, and not really cost you anything. If you already have it for free, saving 30,000 gems on that blueprint piece is completely fine. For the Hope Cloak is awesome. There's nothing really bad I can say about it. I might move the Hope Cloak a little up just because it's so good. The Hope Cloak is awesome. Build it before you run infantry. Easy peasy. You don't have to overthink it. No gear update is really going to change that. Dragon's Breath is really good. It's probably slightly better than Milky Way in my opinion. The gear update could make it slightly worse, slightly better, slightly worse. I would consider it an S tier piece, but I see how it could be swapped. Horn and Ring are both awesome. They give you a bunch of damage, they give you a bunch of rage. These are the best accessories in the game that you could possibly get. If you have a ring and a horn on all your marches, no one's really going to look at you weird. They might want like 1 dagger in there, but it's really not a big issue. Set cavalry boots are really, really good. They're the minimum thing that you're going to need for cavalry. The KVK cavalry helm is also a really good piece, and it's probably the thing I'd build right after boots. The update might make the KVK cavalry helm a little worse. I don't know if it's necessarily ever going to get as bad as the cavalry set helm. The cavalry set helm isn't actually terrible. It's just worse than the KVK helm. So I'd focus on the KVK helm instead. With that being said, I mean, that's the entire list. That's every piece of gear in the game, I believe, and that's kind of how I'd rank them, and it's why I'd rank them in that way. Again, this list isn't perfect. As a disclaimer, this list is mostly covering how I view things from my own perspective and how I view them for the open field. I may give points for garrison, I may give points for cost efficiency, but at the end of the day, it's like, okay, what are my minimums for the open field? What pieces of gear do I really need? What kind of pieces of gear does everybody really need? And how can we make that function? How can we make our marches function with the most effective and efficient pieces of gear humanly possible? And so some things you may be thinking, you know, why is the Windswept set higher than the Ash of the Dawn? Why is Savage Totem, which is like a barbing piece that is basically free when it comes to getting bones, why is that higher than the infantry set weapon? Why is that higher than Karaku drums? That is just how I see it. I see barb chaining is probably better than drums, because I'd rather barb chain into a horn or a ring rather than just settle for drums out of the egg. Anyway, enough disclaimers. This is my list. If you guys disagree with it, you guys are welcome to add any corrections or anything you'd like to the comments in the description below. This is probably one of my more opinionated, one of my more slipshotted, like firing from the hip type of videos. This is just kind of my gut feeling on where I like everything. I mean, obviously I have a reason for everything, but this is how I generally see it. Again, I also do private coaching. If you guys don't know, I do private coaching at $35 a session for an on-stream and $75 a session for an off-stream. If you guys are interested in private coaching, make sure you go to the Discord in the description below and make a ticket. If you guys want to get notifications when I go live or contact me on not live, that same Discord is where you should go. If you guys want to help support the channel, I am full-time. Every single donation helps out a ton. Donate to the Streamlabs link in the description below is the best way to make that happen. And with that being said, guys, I think this is my full gear list, and that is my thoughts behind everything. I want you guys to have an absolutely wonderful day, and thank you so much for showing up. Bye.